bits. First of all, I'm going to give you a brief overview of Year 4 SPF and also introduce the recently published Strategic Investment and Enterprise call, which we put out just before Christmas. I'll then hand over to my colleague James Glover, delivery lead, and he's going to talk you through all the specific technical details of making an application into this particular call. We do also have other colleagues on the call as well to assist with fielding questions in the chat, and we'll try to make it clear when it's a member of the team replying. Just a little bit of housekeeping. We're anticipating to have over 300 people on the call, so we're going to do our best to field questions as they come in and to answer as many as we can, and hopefully also have a little bit of time at the end to cover questions as well. But if not, we're also going to capture all the questions and give written responses, and we will issue those by email as soon as possible after the session. We've got an hour scheduled, and we're going to do our best to keep to time, and might even finish a bit early, because we do appreciate for many of you this will probably be over your lunch break. As always, our Cornwall and Isles of Scilly Good Growth website is a great source of information. We spent a lot of time putting that website together, and a lot of the underlying detail that myself and James and other colleagues will be covering in the next hour can be found on the website, which we're also continually updating as well. So onto the main bits. First thing to say is we're really pleased that Cornwall and Isles of Scilly has been allocated a further year of Shared Prosperity Fund. This comes following the government autumn budget back in October, where it was announced that SPF, or Shared Prosperity Fund, would continue for a fourth year at a reduced amount to act as a transition year ahead of wider funding reforms. We don't know what those wider funding reforms are yet, but we hope to hear from government sort of much later this year in terms of what the funding landscape might look like past March 2026. Following that initial national announcement, which came in October, in mid-December, so sort of just before Christmas, it was confirmed that Cornwall and Isles of Scilly had been allocated 47.3 million. This is to be delivered and spent between the 1st of April 2025 and the 31st of March 2026. I'd like to acknowledge that that does, of course, give us a very challenging timescale for projects to be submitted, appraised, go through decision-making process and contracting in order to be ready to begin on the 1st of April. And we will talk about that a little bit more later in the session in terms of the whole process. Those of you that are familiar with Good Growth and SPF to date will know that since 2022, the Good Growth programme has funded a wide range of projects under the three main investment themes. These were supporting local business, community in place, and people and skills. And the types of activities funded included things such as business support, small grants that ranged in value from £2,000 up to £200,000 for businesses, community organisations, along with various skills programmes and people support programmes. We're really pleased that with a Year 4 of SPF now confirmed, it does mean that much of that will continue, including the small grants programme. So that's grants under 200,000 SPF for businesses and community organisations. The full details of those are still being worked up, so please do bear with us. But in the meantime, keep an eye on the website and social media, and also sign up to the newsletter. We have got a little bit more information from this morning of when we hope that they will be open. We're looking towards the end of January, beginning of February, but we'll be able to put a little bit of information in the chat, but that's also going to shortly be on the website as well. So please refer back to that. We're all certainly challenged by the timescales that we're working to, and the team's working really hard to get these open as soon as possible. So that brings us on to the main point of today's webinar, which is the Strategic Business and Enterprise Investment Call. This is for projects seeking over £200,000 of SPF, and we published that shortly before Christmas, and it has a deadline for applications on the 27th of January. You'll see that this is quite similar to previous SPF calls, but there are some notable developments in the strategic context that will govern the type of investments and projects that the programme is seeking to fund for this transition year. The Good Growth Investment Plan does remain the overarching strategy for investments, but since the start of SPF in 2022, there has been key developments in the overall strategic context. That includes a new government with new missions. We also have an emerging national industrial strategy, and Cornwall Council has also published its new economic development strategy, the Good Growth Plan, and that sets out the 10-year vision for achieving economic growth in Cornwall. This includes identifying our distinctive core and foundational sectors, and a notable point within this call for SPF is a highlighted focus on distinctive and core sectors as a priority area for investment. Key point on that, to be clear, that that's not about eligibility, but instead it's about prioritisation, where we're working with reduced funding and this evolved strategic context to deliver against. There was really a clear need for Cornwall and Isles of Scilly to target funding and leverage this final year of SPF to hopefully, with the ambition to set the foundations for delivering the objectives set out in the Good Growth Plan. And of course, that means investing in and supporting the delivery of our high growth, high impact activities, as well as unlocking challenges in our core sectors. So we're really keen to see project applications coming in that continue to drive those outcomes and help us achieve prosperity and clean, inclusive growth. We're not prescriptive about the type of project activities that the programme is looking to invest in, but projects must show how they make a significant contribution to economic growth in Cornwall and Isles of Scilly, show us how they fully align with the programme investment objectives and the ambitions set out in the Good Growth Plan. Projects must also be deliverable within a very tight timescale. We're going to talk about this more, and I think it's going to probably be a recurring theme as well. And this is going to be a really important consideration for yourselves when you are applying and taking that into account when you design your proposals. Proposals for projects can cover all manner of activities, innovation, workspace development, capacity and capability building within sectors. We're looking to create high value, well-paid jobs, improve productivity, etc. There's lots more detail in the call that's published on the website. Both capital and revenue funding is available, and proposals can also be a mixture of both. Any project that is applying and will be successful with shared prosperity will also be delivering against the good growth principles. We're not prescriptive as to what that looks like. Sorry, bear with me. Can we get the next slide, please, Amanda? Thank you. So we're not prescriptive about what good growth should look like within a project, but we do expect all projects and applicant organisations to take these into consideration and embed them as part of your project design and delivery. And this is a key part of scoring proposals that come in as well. On the website, there's some really good resources that go into a lot more detail about good growth and how that can be reflected in projects. And what we ask for is to be innovative and be ambitious. I'm going to hand over to my colleague James now, who will cover all the essential technical aspects of making an application. Thank you. Cheers, James.
Thanks, Claire. So now I'm going to talk about the strategic business and enterprise investment opportunity, the actual kind of nitty gritty of it. So I think just to kind of go over the key points by way of summary. So yeah, project delivery spend period is 1st of April 2025 to 31st of March 2026. So that means that we are, just as Claire's explained, looking for projects that can deliver within that time frame. There's no extension beyond the 31st of March 2026. So we do need projects that can spend fully at 100% within that time frame. We also, and these timescales are challenging, but they were set by central government, so we're just working to that time frame, which we do appreciate is challenging for all involved. So we have a minimum grant award of 200,000, so that means that must be the minimum cost of your project. I'll talk more about intervention rates, but effectively, you know, we're looking for projects that are probably kind of around 4 to 500,000 with a minimum grant award of 200,000 from ourselves, but we'll talk about that in a minute. The application deadline is 5 p.m. on the 27th of January. So that's when we need a complete application, supporting annex and supporting documents. And again, I'll cover that later on in the presentation. And again, they must be in by 5 p.m. Anything that comes in after that time or an incomplete application won't be able to proceed. So really important that you do look at the guidance on our website. You do submit the necessary forms and supporting documents, so we do have a complete application from yourselves that we can move to the next stage for appraisal and decision. Just on the application process, we and thanks to some people that have notified us, and we have noted that there was a technical issue with the application form and the annex. So we have on our website put the corrected kind of updated versions of those there. So we will need project, if you downloaded the kind of an earlier version, we will need you just to, if you could please transfer that information onto the new application form and annex. And they're available on the website, and colleagues can put that link in the chat. The majority of the content is the same, but some of the gateway criteria has changed in the wording, and on the annex intervention rate formula wasn't putting across correctly, so this has been addressed. And it's also important to note that the application form and the annex form part of your grant funding agreement if your project is successful. So that's kind of part of your legally binding contract. So it is important that that's accurate and correct. And just on the kind of grant intervention rates, so yes, we can fund up to 100% maximum, but this is a business opportunity, and we are looking for projects that are kind of from the business community, are most likely going to have some kind of economic return. So as a result, we'd normally expect some form of private match funding or other funding to contribute towards the total project cost. So though we can fund up to 100%, typically we're looking at a target kind of intervention rate of 50%. It is a competitive process and we've had lots of inquiries, so we will look at kind of value for money and how much grant people are requesting. So again, a consideration for projects is what is the minimum grant rate needed to make your project happen from the Shared Prosperity Good Growth Plan and Programme. And the key thing is we are looking for new additional activity. We can't fund continuation activity or business as usual activity. It's got to be a new project, new activity to the organisation that's applying. So looking, onto kind of supporting local business. What we're looking for here is we're looking to boost productivity, decarbonising and reaching net zero, creating high quality jobs and enhancing skills and training. So for the first 2 points about boosting productivity and decarbonising and reaching net zero, what we're looking for is support to help businesses make visible improvements and advancements in technology, which will boost that productivity and lead to increased investment and competitiveness, looking at projects that bring together businesses and partners within and across sectors to share knowledge, expertise and resources and stimulate innovation and growth. We're looking to increase and help private sector investment in growth, which again will enhance those activities through targeted support for small and medium-sized businesses, and help undertake new to firm innovation, adopt productivity enhancing measures, energy efficiency and low carbon technologies and techniques, and also look at projects that help to start or grow exports. So that summary slide covers what we're looking for within the call, within the funding opportunity. Now the next slide, please. So it's a competitive process. We're looking to fund projects that will go through the process and score the highest. And this is the appraisal criteria which we've included in here. Again, all these documents are available on our Good Growth website. But what we're looking for here is appraisal criteria that will be this balance shown on the slide will be how we will actually kind of award funding, and it will be through projects that score the highest through the appraisal and decision-making process. So in terms of strategic alignment, what we're looking for there is we're looking for how your project fits with the strategies. Claire's covered the good growth plan, the growth plan that will follow it for Cornwall. There's the Cornwall industrial strategy. Government are looking at a national industrial strategy. How does it fit with both local and national strategies, the project you're proposing? And that's your strategic alignment. So you'll see that gets 40% of the score. Within that, another 15% is for that good growth plan, including the principles. So how are you going to deliver a project that's low carbon, net zero, helps with nature recovery as part of your business? Will also lead to helping with address diversity and inclusion in the workforce and the wider community, and also help grow the business and economy. We're also looking at deliverability. Obviously, this is a very short window for delivery. So we really are looking for projects that can deliver, and it's clearly articulated in your application that you can deliver your project by the 31st of March 2026. And I'll talk about the criteria and the gateway criteria, which will help evidence that. So things like you've already got planning permission in place, you sorted out your match funding to support the project, all those kind of things that give us confidence that your project can deliver by the 31st of March. And then also value for money. It's a competitive process. Does your project offer good value for money? And that's in terms of total cost, how much grant funding you're requesting from us in relation to the overall total project cost. What are we getting in return for that grant investment in terms of buying public outcomes, so creating jobs, growing sales, those kind of things that will be of wider benefit to Cornwall and the Isles of Scilly. So there's those areas, and I think it's worth noting that the quality of the application is key. How can you sell your project to us? How can you show that your project in a competitive environment stands above other projects, and what is your unique selling point that fits your project against our funding criteria? So in terms of gateway criteria, what we're looking for here, this is really important and can't stress this enough, that these are criteria that you need to have in place when you apply. It's really important. If projects don't come in with these things in place and with the supporting documents evidence, then we'll be unable to progress your application further, and it will not pass the gateway criteria phase. So if it's a project requesting grant of over 500,000, if it's capital investment, we'll need a business case. This is based on the Treasury's 5-step model, and there's more detail on our website about the business case. If it's more a revenue-based project, we'll need a delivery plan. And for the delivery plan, that's where we're looking at, can you implement a large-scale project? So can you clearly outline milestones for the delivery, dates, when staff will be employed, outputs created, when you'll be claiming the grant, reports submitted, those kind of things. So quite clear that it gives us confidence that this project is deliverable, especially on that larger scale. Smaller scale projects, we still need things like milestones, but again, we don't need separate, more detailed documents to support it. Match funding needs to be secured and evidenced. So if you're applying and submitting and you're going to get, say, 50% of your funding from the bank, we need a formal letter from the bank that actually details that funding, the private match funding has been agreed, not just in principle, but there is evidence that has been agreed, terms and conditions, and a signed letter in place. Equally, if you're getting private match from within business reserves, we then need to show where that is, which account it's readily available, etc. Financial accounts. So we need 18 months of, as a minimum, of financial accounts, and that's what we're asking to see. So that's what we need. Obviously, understand that that's probably only available for established businesses. if you are a new startup or a spin-off business, then we do provide further business support through our Growth Hub program, and we'd suggest that you seek support and advice through that avenue. Lease agreement and landlord permissions in place. So if you're a tenant, we'll need landlord permissions in place by the again, this is all by the 27th of January when you submit your application. It's again the same with lease agreements. If it's a sizable project, expect reasonable lease term in place as well to justify why public funding is put into that organisation, and it will be there for a reasonable time. Also need relevant internal organisational approvals. So, it's been through internal governance processes, been signed off by the board, directors, whatever the appropriate structure is in your organisation, to show that your project has got those necessary approvals in place. And if you need those approvals, have you submitted a letter from relevant people within your organisation to say that that has been through those internal governance processes. Capital build projects need to have statutory consents in place. So if it's a capital build, you will need to submit a copy of your planning permission alongside your application. If you need other statutory consents like marine management organisation or environment agency consents, whatever it may be, you will also need to submit those with your application. If you do not have those in place and you apply, your application unfortunately won't pass gateway and it will be rejected. And again, this is due to such a short time frame, we need complete applications. If you're a lead applicant, so we're asking for lead applicants to apply on behalf of a partnership, then again, we'll need draft partnership agreements in place where you're acting as the lead organisation with a number of partners sitting behind, and how that will function and operate. We need evidence of job descriptions for those people that will be working on the project, and if they're going to be recruited, etc., timeframes for doing that, and clear milestones for that project activity. So, when will, if it's a capital project, when will you break ground? When will the foundations be in place, etc. So we need that kind of granular detail so we can see clearly that it's achievable within this condensed time frame by 31st of March 26, and that you can that it's not so tight that if anything, if there was slippage, potentially there's still time to achieve it within that condensed time frame. And the next slide, please. So the application and next steps. So I think it's important just to kind of visualize what we're doing in terms of the process and how with submitting your application that will kind of go through our process. So again, due to the tight timescales dictated by government and the short kind of spending timescales linked to it, we've had to have this tight application window, just to make sure that successful projects do have that full year for delivery. So very much due to that volume of interest, we're making this a very much a self-service approach. So all the help and support should be on our website. So we've got guidance notes there, we've got how-to videos. So please do look at those. Please note that some of those how-to videos may have been for previous funding opportunities, but the principles are the same. But the actual guidance we want you to follow is all through this business fund. So do look at that, read the eligibility criteria and initiation document, and do check that, from your perspective, you feel your project and your organisation is eligible to apply. Then you need to complete the application form, the annex and legal declaration form, and that needs to be submitted to Good Growth by 5 p.m. on 27th of January 2025, and that needs to include the supporting evidence. So business case to our delivery plan if required, if you're asking for over £500,000. You also need to obviously make sure that any other supporting documents as identified in the gateway criteria have also been submitted alongside your application so that it is deemed a complete application. Then with your application, it will then go into, if it is complete, it will then progress into appraisal, and that will be appraised and be presented. That will go to the Economic Prosperity Board on the 27th of February, and that will either fail the gateway or proceed to the Economic Prosperity Board for that consideration. Once it's gone to the Economic Prosperity Board, they're the decision-making panel. They'll make that decision. Once decisions have been made and that meeting's taken place, there's a 10-day legal cooling off period. And after that period has finished, we will then be able to communicate decisions to projects. If you are successful, which is stage 5 of the slide, you'll enter a contracting period with the Good Growth team, and we'll provide come back to you with any kind of clarifications as required, any outstanding points that we need, just so that we can then finalise the funding agreement. And this funding decision will remain confidential until the clarifications are met and we're happy with the grant funding agreement. So please, don't share the news wider. We'll tell you about publicity and everything after that. Once you've received and signed your legal contract with Cornwall Council, that's our grant funding agreement, is what we call that. The project can begin and you can then make the funding decision public. We'll also make the decision public through our comms team as well. And then it's a case of you delivering your project. You'll work with Good Growth Programme Management Office and our project lead. So each project will be given a dedicated project lead, which will be your named contact, which will help give you advice as needed whilst you deliver your project. We'll also help you ensure that you're compliant with branding and publicity requirements, and help deliver the project on time and within budget. And then just now move on to other things to consider. So talked about kind of the headline points. Also linked to this is, what's your project going to deliver? So what is it kind of going to deliver for the public funding? So this is the outputs and outcomes. So outputs are what are normally delivered when the project is live, and normally kind of within a 12-month period. So that would be, you might kind of increase your floor space by building a new kind of manufacturing unit. So that might be something that's delivered within the actual project itself. And then an outcome is something that's delivered after the project's finished, but might be a year or two into the future. And as a result of that investment, that might be then that 2 jobs are created and they're delivered in, for example, later in 2026 and into 2027. So that's the difference between outputs and outcomes. But again, what we are looking for is those key kind of outputs and outcomes that we're buying with public funding, and that's what we're looking to achieve with this programme. Government haven't been specific about what outputs and outcomes they want through this additional funding. So at the moment, we're just using the current programme outputs and outcomes, but obviously it is business focused. So whilst you're pulling your application together, we'll be very interested in things like job creation, investment in things like research, development, innovation, additional workspace created, and then the revenue costs linked to that. So this is very much what we're looking at there. Procurement, this is key. So it's public funding. So there are certain legislative requirements to adhere to. So the procurement process must demonstrate value for money, be fair, open and transparent. Again, we've got procurement guidance policies on our website. So you can either follow those or have your own policies that must be similar to what we have on there. Just briefly, if your procurement's under £24,999 can be procured via direct award. If each item's £25,000 and above, exclusive of VAT, it must follow the tender process I've explained. So again, important that that's thought about, and obviously given the short timescales and how long it could take to procure things, that is thought about in process and moving at pace. And And then cash flow and claims. Yes, we do need to see a detailed cash flow for your project. It needs to be project specific rather than business specific. So when is your expenditure and income coming in, including the SPF grant? When are you going to actually be making key outlays in terms of the project when you're doing certain items? So again, the cash flow should link in nicely with the milestones that you're proposing. And if you need to do a business case or a delivery plan, if you're after a larger amount over 500,000 of grant, that should all tie in to tell that story. I think just then linked to that, our claims, just to explain how our claims process works, we pay claims quarterly in arrears is our normal approach. So you will need to be able to cash flow the project and then claim quarterly once you have incurred the expenditure. So again, not only will you need private match funding, you also need to be able to cash flow the expenditure till we pay you in arrears. Then the payment in arrears is once you've submitted your claim with supporting invoices and effectively the evidence of that expenditure or defrayal, we can then make those grant payments. So do bear that in mind as well. And that's, normally, as I said, quarterly in arrears. And that discussion and finalising that will form part of the contracting if your project is successful. Please do look at our frequently asked questions, watch our YouTube videos and previous webinars for further support and information. And again, do look at that. Once you have looked at all our resources, if you still can't find an answer to your question, then do email the Good Growth mailbox and a colleague will provide a response to you. And then just in summary, just wanted to talk about, just kind of key points to take away really. So the key dates, so 27th of January 2025 is our application deadline. That's 5 p.m. So that must be when if you want to kind of take part in this, you do need to submit your application by then. So that's your application form, the supporting annex, legal declaration, and the relevant gateway criteria that are applicable to your project, although that evidence needs to be submitted by the 27th of January, and your project must deliver and be complete, so financially complete, by the 31st of March 2026 when the programme ends. The key sectors we're looking at supporting are the distinctive sectors, so Claire's covered this: critical minerals, renewable energy, marine and space, and then the core sectors, agri-food, visitor economy and creative industries. We can accept projects from other industries as well, but they, in terms of prioritisation and how this funding's structured, those are what we're looking for, but we can accept those other things, but that will obviously be reflected in project scoring. Key grant amounts, so 200,000 is minimum grant award, so you must be requesting this or above to be eligible, and that typically gives a total project cost of 400,000. So we're looking for projects of 400,000 or above typically as well. Again, there may be cases where that's different, but do read the guidance and see whether that's applicable to yourselves. And then, just to reiterate, those key documents, they must be submitted with your application form to be a complete application that can progress. So do look at, when you're pulling together your application, look at what's required in the initiation form and how your project will address that. Do you meet the criteria? You've looked at the investment plan, the good growth plan. You've got your application form, the latest version on there. If you've downloaded the previous version that we've since updated, same with the application annex, your legal declaration and all the supporting documents. Thank you. Now it's, question.